Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live, powered by Riverwind Casino. My name is Brandon Drumm. I'm here with Parker Thune. Got Spencer Forsythe on the board. Got a lot to talk about. Obviously, huge get in the transfer portal for football and basketball over this past week. Rivals camp coming up. Talk a little bit about what the expectation is for a few positions heading into this season and a lot more. Parker, before we do that, let's thank our sponsors.
Let's do it. And that starts with our presenting sponsor, Riverwind Casino, which, folks, has been the premier gaming destination in OKC for almost 2 decades now. Nearly 3,000 electronic games, table games, bars and dining options, plus the best live music in the metro. It's no surprise that Riverwind is always a good time. Also, want to give a shout out to our friends at Janiking, the greatest team to ever clean and a proud partner of OU Athletics, delivering spotless results from stadiums to any size business across the country. You can check out all of those solutions at janiking.com. Visit them again at janiking.com. And introducing a new sponsor of ours, Huel. Yes, folks, Huel, Huel, simple as that. If you're constantly on the move or just tired of skipping meals, Huel has you covered. They make it easy. Their Black Edition ready to drink is a total game changer. It's a complete meal in one bottle, 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, high fiber, low sugar. You're going to feel full, focused, and ready for your day. No prep, no cleanup, just grab and go. Huel's already sold over 500 million meals around the world, and now it's your turn to try it. Perfectly balanced meal in one bottle. They taste great. Come in such flavors as chocolate, vanilla, which is what I have here, strawberry banana, and even iced coffee. And lastly, Huel is incredibly affordable with high protein meals for less than $5 per bottle. It's a budget-friendly option that you can get genuinely excited about. So start saving time and money without compromising your nutrition today with this exclusive offer for new customers of 15% plus a free gift using the exclusive code OU Insider at Huel.com. That's OU Insider at Huel.com for 15% plus a free gift for new customers when you use our code. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition bottled.
All right. Obviously, Oklahoma landed a huge wide receiver commit out of the transfer portal uh, by getting none other than Jer'Michael Carter from McNeese State. Huge get for Oklahoma. Obviously, they were battling Baylor, they were battling Vanderbilt. Arkansas came in late, tried to get him up on a visit there. Started throwing around some money. Oklahoma combated all that off and, stayed off Tennessee visit as well, Parker. Um, that was a big get. A huge need for Oklahoma for a variety of reasons. Um, the injury bug has been the Achilles heel for that room over the last year plus, probably the last 18 months, it feels like, right? Um, he's a big guy, 6'4", about 192, 195. I think it was Jay that put up I guess his highlights. And if you're not excited about him as an Oklahoma fan, you should be, because he is would you say he's a stronger version, like just physically stronger than maybe a Jaden Gibson?
Yeah, there's certainly some strength there. And I think the comparison, I've made it several times now with Michael Carter, at least expectations wise, is that he's obviously not a guy coming from McNeese that you expect is going to be mentioned in the same breath this year as Deion Burks and Isaiah Satania and Giovanni Gibson. But there's precedent for FCS transfers getting to campus and exceeding expectations. I know we haven't actually seen that yet with
Yeah.
Giovanni Gibson, but every arrow has kind of pointed in that direction with him. Hopefully that holds when he gets healthy once again. But to me, Jer'Michael Carter is the type of depth addition that has the potential to be very impactful if utilized properly. And I have no doubt he will be in
Yeah.
Ben Arbuckle's offense under Emmett Jones' tutelage. The nice thing about this acquisition is he's a multi-year guy. This is not a one-year rental. He's got 3 years to play two. So 2 years of eligibility, but he can also redshirt at some point if he needs slash wants to. He doesn't have to put it all together in 2025. If all 2025 is an opportunity for him to learn and grow and absorb in preparation for a significant leap in terms of ability and production in 2026, then great. The way I see it, Brandon, with him being the last piece of the puzzle, and this doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be 14th out of 14 on the pecking order come fall
Yeah.
camp, because I don't think he will be. But
No.
to me, if you get 15 catches, excuse me, out of this guy in the 2025 season, it's worth the investment at this point. And I think what you hope is that, similar to Jaden Gibson in 2023, you feel those 15 catches.
Yeah.
That Jer'Michael Carter makes some impactful plays across those 15 catches. So, look, yeah, depth addition more than anything. I don't think he shows up with superstar expectations. Could he morph into a superstar? Sure. But I think as you look ahead immediately to the 2025 season, what you hope is that Jer'Michael Carter is seeing the field in a meaningful capacity on a regular basis, maybe not dominating the snap count or the target share, but making an impact when he is on the field, the way that Jaden Gibson did when he only
Mhm.
caught 14 passes in a 2023 season that I think most would have regarded as a breakout year.
Yeah. Look, as bad as Oklahoma wanted Carter, I think people got a little worried. We never got the vibe that Oklahoma was worried during this process at all. I think I don't want to use the word annoyed. I think
You might use that word.
they were a little annoyed. Yeah, they were a little annoyed with some things. They were a little annoyed with some things that were
I mean,
going
we
on
just
behind the
kind of
scenes.
sat there in a holding pattern for
Yeah.
3 days, which isn't that long,
No.
really. But when you're talking portal, that feels like an eternity, doesn't it?
100%. Yes,
I don't
100%.
know how we lived through 4 weeks of the Ethan O'Connor soap opera in December.
I forgot about that. Thanks for the reminder, but I forgot that that thing was because he essentially committed to Oklahoma for all intents and purposes, and then slowly but surely backed out of that. Something always came up for why he couldn't sign on the dotted line, and that it kind of felt like that's where this was trending. But at the same time, Oklahoma, when you talk to people around Norman, they just kept saying, you know, Carter's a difference maker. He will make that room way better. He will be a person that plays if he signs. However, they would say they like what they saw out of a lot of the young guys during spring. And I think there was a little bit of, I think when you feel confident about the quarterback position, you feel a little bit better about the wide receiver position. And I think the same thing goes with the offensive line. I think the fact that they feel a lot better about the offensive line, there wasn't a lot of freak out over wide receiver. Like, you're going to throw, like, I look back at, I'm trying to think of the season. You were a youngster. You were probably what, 10 in 2009, correct?
Yep.
I just guessed. However, the 2009 Oklahoma had the yips at wide receiver. You know, they had the Jazz Reynolds of the world. They had who was a Miller from New Jersey. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously,
DeJuan Miller.
DeWan
Cameron
Miller.
Kenny? Was
Cam,
Cameron Kenny on that team?
no, because he was 20 when he 2010, 2011, I
Maybe
believe.
so.
Yeah, but regardless, I know he made a bunch of big plays in that 2010 Bedlam. He basically saved Oklahoma twice in that game with two huge catches. But it kind of feels like that's where Oklahoma is at the wide receiver position. A lot of talent, young, inexperienced talent, but guys that you feel can make plays, and you're probably going to see if it stayed without getting Carter. And I still think you're probably going to see this. To be honest, I'm just being real with you. You're going to see some progression. You're going to see some bumps in the road a little bit, but nothing like last year. And it's just going to be a constant ascension with this group. Uh, and I think that's probably a good place to talk about since they picked up Carter. How do we see this room playing out? Because for me, I think it's a given. Isaiah Satania, Deion Burks are probably going to be your dudes to start off. If Giovanni Gibson would have been healthy, that would have been your one, Dion two, and then I probably would have. I mean, I'm assuming Isaiah Satania three, but now you're looking at probably an Elijah Thomas as your third or fourth guy potentially, right? And
Yeah.
then your fifth guy, like, do we not talk about Jacob Jordan enough? Do we not talk about I do we not talk about oh my gosh, I didn't exactly I just went blank here. Jacob Jordan, Javon Kearney. Do we not talk about
Zion.
Kearney enough? Yeah, Zion Kearney. Do we not talk about them enough? Like I feel like Kearney proved at the end of the year that he was moving in the right direction. Jacob Jordan proved they were moving in the right direction. Do we underestimate who they are as players year one, year two? Because that's usually the biggest growth, right?
Yes, generally speaking.
I mean, I'm asking you, like, how do you see the room playing out? Like, I told you my five, six. Like,
Here's
do you see any difference?
Yeah,
Do you
well,
see
look,
choice?
I think your starters right now, I feel like your starting group once Giovanni Gibson gets healthy again is pretty clear. I think it's Giovanni Gibson, Deion Burks, Isaiah Satania. But I also expect that there's going to be a lot of competition to occupy the spots on that second line, second shift, if you will. Keontez Lewis, right? Josiah Martin, guys that have played and produced at the collegiate level before. You can throw Jer'Michael Carter in that conversation. And then you have guys that last year in Zion Kearney, Ivan Carione, Jacob Jordan, who played a lot more than they probably were expected to, that they themselves were expecting to as true freshmen. And then the youngsters are the ones that can really throw a wrench in the calculus if they're ready. Elijah Thomas and Manny Choice. And man,
Yeah,
I I do think if there is a freshman on this roster right now that winds up in a starting spot by year's end, give me Elijah Thomas. Man, that kid,
I
yeah, he's gonna be fun.
I would essentially say I agree. I think Elijah Thomas is going to be a baller. I think you talk to anybody around Norman right now, and they feel Elijah Thomas is going to be a huge, huge asset to that wide receiver room. I I'm interested to see because I continually hear good things about Isaiah Satania, and we heard great things about him during the spring. He wasn't a huge, huge game changer at Arkansas. He was a big playmaker for him, obviously, a deep threat with his speed, but it wasn't a down in, and he wasn't somebody you looked at and went, he's going to make a play on this third down, or he could potentially make a play on this third down, or you have a feeling that he could be this or that. I think he's kind of turning into that. And we've heard that a lot from people around Norman, Switzer Center, whatever you want to say. Um, I I just think it's a shame that, and there was a question in here. People act like Giovanni Gibson's going to be out half the season. Like I don't know for sure how long he's going to be out. Like to be honest, I don't think there's like a set timetable to you. Like I think they're bringing him along, but you worry about the rust when
Mhm.
you're not going through summer workouts like everybody else or at the pace everybody else is going, and you're being held out of things during fall camp just to save you, right? Even if it gets to that point, like I'm not saying that's what it's going to get to. So until we see him back out there playing and hear what he's doing in practice, you're a little leery about what he's going to do or produce during the season, right? Compared to what we thought he was going to do before the injury.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And absent a healthy Giovanni Gibson or a 100% version, and I guess we may never know, right? Because we haven't
Yeah.
seen it with our own two eyes what 100% of Giovanni Gibson looks like.
We've
But
heard it
if
though.
Giovanni Gibson gets back and he's just not a difference maker for whatever reason, at that point, I think you wonder about who the meal ticket for Oklahoma at wide receiver is. You'd hope it's Deion Burks, given what he did at Purdue while he was fully healthy, and he was never really fully healthy, save for the first couple games last season at OU. But that puts a lot of pressure on Deion Burks to be the guy. And if he is not the guy, then man, you might have to play the death by a thousand cuts game in that wide receiver room. Which Oklahoma has, I mean, they've done that before to modest success. You look back on the 2021 season, I couldn't even tell you who led Oklahoma in receiving that year. It depends on what category you're looking at, because I'm pretty sure Mario Williams led them in receptions as a true freshman. Um, it may have been Jaden Hazelwood that led them in receiving yards, but it was just kind of all over the place in
Yeah.
2021. But that was a fine football team. It wasn't a championship football team, but they won 10 games in the regular season. Lost out on a chance to play for a Big 12 title in the final week of the regular season in Stillwater. But I, you don't necessarily have to have the
Wounds,
guy at wide
Parker.
receiver.
The wounds.
Yeah,
The second half wounds.
you don't necessarily have to have the guy at wide receiver in order to field a successful winning football team, but it
Mhm.
certainly helps, right? It certainly helps to have a guy that you know is going to be able to go up against some of the best defensive backs in the SEC and still prove to be a reliable option who's consistently getting open and somebody that John Mateer, he can look once at him and know that he's got a match or he's got a mismatch out there
Yeah.
that he can take advantage of. So if Oklahoma doesn't have that guy, again, it's not the end of the world, but you're playing in a tough league, a deep league, man, and a league that's going to have a ton of defensive talent. Obviously, a ton of talent on both sides of the ball, but it helps to have the guy
No,
out there at
almost
wideout.
100%. Hey, we got a super chat. Thank you, Daryl Revels, for the 4.99. He asks, "What do you guys predict the offensive split to be? More run heavy, pass heavy, or balanced? Curious on what our identity will be during this year under Ben Arbuckle." I'm going to say run, but it's not because I think Oklahoma's going to run more. I think because John Mateer likes to scramble, that he's going to be in that 500 to 800 yard range in rushing. And because I, I think the top two backs are going to be Ott and probably X, I would assume, right? I
Really?
think that's what we both feel, right? I think we both agree with that, right?
I might give the edge to Javante Barnes if
Really?
he's healthy. If
Well,
he's healthy,
that's the if.
which is a big if,
That's the
granted.
if.
But
So I'll go with X.
now I here's where I stand on that, Daryl. I don't think you bring in Jaden Ott if you're going to be a pass first football team. And historically speaking, Oklahoma hasn't been a pass first football team within
Mhm.
the last decade. Regardless of who's been the offensive coordinator, whether Josh Heupel or Lincoln Riley, Jeff Lebby, I mean, go on down the list, right? Seth Luttrell, Joe John Finley, now Ben Arbuckle. But within the last decade, Oklahoma's splits have always leaned towards the run. And I think that's kind of how it has to be in the SEC.
Yeah.
I also think if you just look at the personnel and you go back to the conversation we were just having, right? Does Oklahoma have the guy at wide receiver? I'm not convinced. Do they have the guy at running back right now? Yes, they do. And his name is Jaden Knott. You don't go and add that guy at a position where you already had several capable options unless you are planning on leaning on him throughout the season. So that's what I expect Oklahoma to do. I think the splits will once again lean in favor of the run. That is not to say that they are going to eschew or ignore the pass game, but I think Oklahoma's strategy is going to be very conventional, time honored, use the run to set up the pass.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think you'll see quite a bit of the quarterback run game with Mateer as well, because he's a tough dude.
So let's, we kind of buried the lead to start this live. I think there's a lot of people that want to talk about the merger, right? I think we need to discuss that a little bit.
We didn't bury the lead. Jer'Michael Carter committing is more important,
Yeah,
at
but
least in an immediate sense.
fair enough. Fair enough. Um, I there's really not a lot to talk about at this point because we don't know a lot.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, I did talk to somebody today that they kind of, we're still under contract, so I think that's the first and foremost. So like, I don't know what that entails or how that entails or what happens after or how that gets resolved or whatever. But um, I mean, we haven't been told anything other than keep doing your stuff. So until we get told otherwise, we're going to keep doing our stuff and keep providing for you guys as much as we possibly can. And even then, I'm sure we own OU Insider. So like that's our entity. We own it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to go away. So I think that's the best way to put it, right, Parker? I don't know. Like you have
Yeah.
anything to add to that?
Well, and I'll just say this, to your point about OU Insider, the value of a brand like that is very directly tied to the people behind it.
Yeah.
And so, look, we've worked hard for many years to build relationships and a network of sources in this market specifically. And so, regardless of what the future holds for OU Insider, for better or worse, my work, Brandon's work, it all speaks for itself, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, not really sure what the merger looks like practically. Obviously, it raises a lot of questions, many of which you have, many of which we have as well, that haven't been answered yet. And I'm very curious to see how they wind up getting answered. But end of the day, the work is the work, and just going to keep plugging away and wait for everything to fall into place structurally whenever it does. And at that point, we'll adjust accordingly. But
Yeah.
business as usual as far as we're concerned for the time being.
Yep. So that's it. Like there's really not much more we can add to that other than we'll see what they have in store. They have not made it sound like anything particularly day to day is changing yet. So until they do, and like we said, we'll keep you guys, updated when we do find out. As far as the OU basketball program goes, I think I saw a tweet today, and I think it was from 68. What was it? So I think you retweeted it first, Parker, and then it's the
Oh yeah, the Field of 68
Field of
tweet.
68. Yeah, Field of 68 tweet. And they talked about Oklahoma's just their land, what they landed in the transfer portal. I think it is almost it's crazy how little that's being talked about nationally.
Let me
Because then
do
you look
some.
at Joe Lenardi's post transfer portal Field of 68 bracketology, and with the best roster Moser has had, bar none, since he's been in Norman, they have them in 8 seed exactly where they were this year. Now,
Yeah,
granted,
which I
there
mean,
isn't a top five pick on that team, probably.
no, there's not.
That makes a difference.
I did some quick math. Between the four transfers that Oklahoma has acquired in the basketball portal, Nigel Pack, Darian Reed, Xavier Brown, Tay Davis, the Sooners are bringing in 53.5 points per game. That'll play.
That'll play.
You can work with that.
That will play. I think that this team has a chance to be, and I know there's questions for who's going to back up Wiggy. Those are fair questions, Parker. Like, what happens? I honestly think with how long Oklahoma is on the perimeter, with I believe Tay Davis is 6'8", 6'9". I
Yeah.
believe Darian Reed is 6'8". You can easily bring in a six man and just shift those guys up to power forward or 4 or 5, right? And make them the 4 and the 5. And just be athletic and long and be able to switch and do a lot of things and really cause havoc defensively. I think this is a dream for Porter Moser, honestly, as far as his lineup goes. And I think Kai Rogers gets kind of overlooked too. He's a top 100 player, and he's 6'10", 250 pounds. And people just kind of brush past him like he does. OU doesn't have a backup, and I know he has it because he hasn't produced. But I mean, you got him, and then you've got Cool Attack, who's still there, right? I love that name. It's my favorite name of all time. So I think the team's going to be really good, Parker. I really do. I think by the end of the year, I could see them being, because I don't think the SEC is going to be quite as deep as it was this year. Though Joe Lunardi has 13 SEC teams in the NCAA tournament.
Which you just kind of get the sense is going to be the new normal, right?
Yeah, it sounds that
Well
way.
over half the SEC in the tournament field.
Yeah, it sounds that way. Hey, we got two super chats.
We do. Let's start with this one from Seth Ammerman. Any drop off at Texas with the losses to the NFL? Well, I look, if you're an
mm,
Oklahoma fan, you'd obviously hope so, right? But I can recall that we were having a very similar conversation last offseason, and there wasn't any drop off, at least not a measurable one. Texas ended up right where they were the previous season, which is in the college football playoff. So, look, that program is rolling right now. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. We can do that. We're all mature enough to see it for what it is. Um, the whole thing with Nick Brooks, which if you've dug into that story, maybe there's something brewing there that is unsavory and undesirable for that program. But save for that, you seem to be looking at a football program that has managed to accumulate a ton of talent. Is obviously, and I saw reports today. I'm sure many of you that are watching saw them as well. Oh, Texas is prepared to pay in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 million dollars for their
do we buy
roster
that
in
though? Do
2025.
you buy that?
It
That seems
it
outlandish.
feels like a lofty number, but I don't think it's impossible the way that the market has been inflated, particularly at some of those critically important positions. Now,
That's fair.
I will say this. I will say this. 35 to 40 million dollars does not equal 35 to 40 million dollars coming out of Texas's NIL collective. 35 to 40 million dollars may equal 20 million from the collective and another
15.
15 to 20 from third-party sources. And so I I do not think that number is indicative of the money that's being spent via Texas's collective, but it would not shock me if all of the endorsements and what have you that Texas's student athletes on the football program account for is in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, yeah, look, obviously, if you're an OU football fan, you would hope there's a drop off. However, I mean, we all watched Quinn Ewers last to the seventh round of the NFL draft. So that tells you what the NFL thinks of Quinn Ewers. And the
Hmm.
NFL, I can almost guarantee you, thinks much more highly of Arch Manning. Believe in Arch, don't believe in Arch. I mean, I know people have very polarizing opinions on that. We got to see it on the field before we render a judgment one way or another. But it is certainly undeniable that with the sheer potential that Arch brings to the table, especially by virtue of the mobility that he possesses that Quinn Ewers just doesn't, the ceiling for Texas is higher
The, the
offensively with him at the controls.
the crazy thing is that Quinn Ewers had a chance to get in the portal and go play at Notre Dame, and he didn't do it.
Well,
And I feel bad for him. But he landed. He's the second guy essentially at Miami. So, seventh round or not, it's kind of the perfect spot for him. And we all know Tua kind of unfortunately has injury problems, so we'll see how that turns out.
Seth
Um,
Ammerman tossed us another couple dollars. We'll hit this one real quick and said thoughts on freshman UT O line arrest and
we
spilling
got
the
two
beans.
more.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I brought that up briefly, the whole Nick Brooks situation, and I guess he acknowledged to police that he was taking recruits to a strip club or something like that. Again, I don't know what's real and what's not with that situation yet, so I don't want to comment on it. It is a legal situation, so definitely don't want to put anything out there that I might regret saying later if it comes to light that the circumstances were not as they were presented in that little snippet. But yeah, not a great look for the university any way you slice it. Real or not real, what's out there right now is not a great look for the University of Texas. But again, that's a program that all in all, over the last several years, hasn't had a ton of those types of situations.
They haven't.
Georgia, on the other hand, it's like every week. But
It's fair.
uh, Texas has done a decent job of keeping their guys in line. Jacob
Well,
Matthews.
before you, I know I've got a joke for this, just because of what is out there. Allegedly, allegedly, was making the NIL dollars rain. That's all I wanted to say.
Hmm.
Allegedly. Okay, moving on.
Wonder if the pole assassin was there. Jacob Matthews gave us $5 and asked, "Did we get a boatload of NIL money, or did Porter just become a master negotiator? Because how are we landing these dudes?" I mean, Porter's a pretty solid negotiator, don't
Yes,
get me
he
wrong, but
is.
it's much more of the former.
Trey Young.
Yeah, getting Trey Young, that helps. That helps a lot.
Ice Iceman was doing some ice. Trey Ice was doing some filthy things, man, with that NIL. He is unbelievable. Like getting those donors talking. He was on the phone talking to donors constantly, getting and helping get the money. And I'm honestly shocked. I think Oklahoma did similarly with Jim Nagy, right? Like you got somebody that the donors could get behind, a big name at the
Hmm.
general manager. And I understand that he's the assistant general manager for the basketball team. But if Oklahoma grabs, let's say, like a Baker Mayfield or somebody, and Baker calls a donor and says, "Hey, I donated $1.5 million. Can you throw in three more for me to help us get such and such and such?" Do you really think the donors are going to say no to that? That was a brilliant move, Parker. Brilliant. And he loves the university. Only 1 year there, but absolutely loves the university, reps it constantly. So he's always going to be a fan favorite. Which is, I always thought Buddy Hield would be that guy, but it turned out to be Trey, which I guess isn't it shocking since he grew up right down the street. Um, Freddie Downing, is
He
this class?
basically
Oh,
asked the
oh,
same
he asked the
question.
same thing. I just now saw the
Yeah,
exact. Yeah.
so I mean, we
Okay.
basically covered all that. Thanks for your contribution, Freddie.
Yes.
Hopefully,
Thank
we
y'all.
did answer your question. I would assume we
Yeah.
did because it's virtually a carbon copy of the previous one. But yeah, we appreciate your contribution to the channel.
Yeah. So I asked this during our podcast, and I'm going to ask you on here. Maybe you feel like things have changed.
Okay. No idea where this is going.
Oh, well, it's about commitments. We talked about how long
Gotcha.
it's been since there's been a commitment. It's been forever, and yeah, we think you decided.
Second longest drought of the Venables
Yep.
era.
How much longer do you think? Number one, and outside of said player, I know where you were going with said player in the middle of the month.
Yep.
Outside of that, how much longer does Oklahoma wait after that for another commitment?
Might be till OV season at that point. That's what it's feeling like, right? Like you don't get the sense, and you can generally feel it out if there are players that you feel are on track to lock in a decision before OV season, but
Yep.
it feels like all of these guys, for the most part, are waiting to take their visits.
Yep.
And that, you know what, Brandon, that could very well be a byproduct of the NIL era that we start to see more and more in the years ahead because all these recruits are going to have agents for the most part, right? And those agents are going to recommend that they wait on a decision until they take all of their official visits and have the chance to talk money with all of these recruits. Now, it doesn't always work that way. For instance, some of my good friends up in the state of Nebraska have been covering the Trey Taylor recruitment quite closely because it does look like he's going to be committing there tomorrow. But
Wow.
there was a story in the Omaha World Herald that apparently outlined how he and his parents and agent have navigated the process, and they've removed, they have not looped him in on any of the NIL conversations, not because they're auctioning him off, but because they're telling him you need to be able to make this decision for yourself independently of all of the money talk. And so he has not been privy to any of the NIL conversations. And he's basically been told, and this is probably good advice for a quarterback who's going to get paid big money regardless, right? Just make what you feel like is the best football decision for you and
That
trust that the money's going to be there. And
Jaden
if you
O'Neal
make
has
a,
the same thing, by the way.
yeah, and if you make a gross miscalculation, we'll weigh in, but
Hmm.
feel free to make your own decision. And so there will be those that navigate it that way, but for the most part, for anybody that's trying and anybody whose camp is trying to maximize their NIL earnings, it's probably to your advantage to wait till the end of OV season and get the chance to hear offers from five, six, seven, even eight different schools.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's gotten to the point where, and I think this is where the fans get upset about, because they're like, they want these kids to just choose Oklahoma or Nebraska or Tennessee or Georgia or whatever because they love the school, because that's what they do. They love the school. However, that's not the reality of the new NIL era, and you're still going to have some of those guys that do that. I think Jaden O'Neal, like I said, committed and did so without the money talk involved in it. And I know that for a fact, actually. A lot of the stuff that they haven't even got to touched on or any of that type of stuff has been just, they're starting to get into that more and more. I think Will Conroy is the same. And obviously, I know Ryder Mix committed without, his, uh, he's got a little brother that's a freaking stud too in North Texas.
Well,
But
and every so often you get a kid like that, right? That just
yeah,
doesn't care that, Ryder Mix wanted to be a Sooner. He's a Sooner.
100%. And I think you'll have some others. I think that'll commit before the actual NIL conversation gets deep, deep, deep into it. Just because they take an official visit doesn't mean everything is ironed out contractually or what they're going to pay them. Maybe they do a roundabout ballpark, but nothing is set in stone. So you're going to have some of these guys that still choose Oklahoma because they want to be at Oklahoma. They're going to take less to go to Oklahoma. You'll have a handful of those guys every year. And naturally, those guys are the ones that end up sticking around usually. I mean, for being honest, yeah, I don't know. I did talk to somebody the other day, and I guess Oklahoma wants to try to get one more tight end in 2026. I don't
Yes,
know.
which I mean,
They have to.
if you've been paying attention on OU Inside the last few weeks, you knew that Oklahoma was really trying to make a push to get onto the or into the final peloton for Ian Premer.
Not happening.
Now, it's an
Yeah.
interesting final five: Notre Dame, Michigan, Kansas, Kansas State, Iowa State.
Yep.
But Oklahoma on the outside looking in. That was the first prospect that Ben Arbuckle visited when he got out seeing
Yep.
recruits during the contact period. So they really tried for Ian Premer, and there you go, folks. It wasn't just Joe John Finley. Ben Arbuckle was the one that went out to Great Bend, Kansas, and they still couldn't talk Ian Premer into booking an official visit to Oklahoma and seriously considering being a Sooner.
Those
But
pesky tight Kansas tight ends, man. They don't like choosing Oklahoma, bro.
well, but again, this that tells you right there that Oklahoma is actively in the market for a second tight end. It has to be the right guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I was trying to remember. I got given a name and I'm trying to find it. As far as tight ends go.
Is it the Roman Voss kid from Minnesota? That was another recent offer that they
No,
threw out.
I think they're from Tennessee. I want to say, is it Carson Sneed? No, he's
He's
committed.
committed to
Yeah.
Tennessee. Yeah.
I look. I know Zachary Turner is viewed as a tight end, and I talked to somebody about that. Like, if you know, he has the body type to play kind of that flex H back type potentially, if he could put the weight on. If, like I said, if, and that's kind of what that person told me. It's like, can he though? And that was Oklahoma's reservation, but they love him as a football player enough that they want him to play wide receiver. It's an Ivan Carry-on type of deal. But I
Yeah.
honestly think Ivan Carry-on could put the weight on to play tight end.
Oh
Don't
yeah, he
you?
could. I mean, he's already up in the
Why
neighborhood
don't
of
they do
230.
that?
So, because I look, given recent events, I am all in favor of moving Ivan Carrion to the tight end room. It's just evidently he's not a good enough blocker that they feel comfortable deploying him at that spot. That's what I've been told.
Practice makes perfect.
But yeah, as I see it, have that guy eat ribeyes and PB&Js all summer, report back at 245, and just block and block and block for the entirety of fall camp and see where that leaves you.
You want to know? I got told the other day a guy, and this won't shock you at all, that, and I've said this before actually, and it just shocked me that somebody around Norman said the same thing. Do you want to know what player on the OU team do you think they said could be an All American tight end if they played tight end?
Ooh.
It's so easy. Like when you think about it, you're like, oh my God, it's so easy.
If they played tight end.
If they played tight end, if they could be convinced to play tight end, because they're still a year away at the position that they're at, they feel, I was told.
Oh man.
Made significant strides this year
Taylor
at
Heim.
said bingo.
Yeah.
If you've ever watched this guy play basketball, which I have multiple times, he would be absurdly good at tight end. Because you got to think about it. Like tight end's a weird position because, um, oh my gosh, homeboy for the Niners, uh,
George Kittle.
George Kittle was 190 pounds when he left Norman North. Turned out to be the best tight end in college football 3 years later.
Well, he wasn't the best tight end in college football. He was just a
One of the
guy
best.
in
One of
college.
the best,
No,
I
he
guess.
straight up was just a guy, man.
You think he was just a guy in
Oh,
college?
because I remember this because I at the time I was working Iowa football broadcasts on
Really?
the Iowa radio network, and so George Kittle was a name I would hear every Saturday. He always seemed to be good for two or three catches that usually didn't mean much of anything. I mean, if you go back and look at his numbers at Iowa, they were not spectacular at
Yeah,
all. I
but
think
nobody spectacular offensively at Iowa.
tight ends and running backs historically do pretty well there. I don't think George Kittle was even the starting tight end at Iowa, at least not the years that I can recall. He may have emerged as the starter later in his
Hold on.
college career, but he was like a fifth round pick. I mean, that was not a guy that came into the NFL with a lot of fanfare. He just kind of, you know, he peaked. He peaked once he got to the
He
league.
was a fifth round pick. Why did I think he got drafted? Who am I thinking of that got drafted higher?
Noah Fant, that
Noah
was the other
Fant.
one.
That's who I'm thinking of.
Noah
Yeah,
Fant was
there
the
it is.
starter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Omaha South's own Noah Fant.
But he was 190, 6'4", 190 coming out of high school. And he went to Iowa because his dad obviously played there with Bob Stoops.
Yeah.
And he turned out to be what he is today. And that's what this person was telling me. He's like, tight end is the weirdest position because you can get the most random, obscure person. And you can look at this skinny person coming out of high school. And next thing you know, they're 250 and they're still a freak athlete. And that's where they turn out to be like these basketball players,
Yeah.
is what they were talking about. It's just a hard place. It's a hard position to recruit. I would have to agree with that. But um, what as far as you didn't go, but like if you were going to guess the next three commits for Oklahoma in 26, who do you think it is?
The next three commits?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. If we're talking guys that could theoretically shut it down before OV season, again, I don't think it's a lengthy list, and I don't think it's even probable that at least a couple of these guys I mentioned are going to shut it down before OV season. But if you made me guess, I would say Ryan Gilbert's an easy choice, right?
Yep.
Um, I would say Noah Best,
Yep.
and maybe somebody starts to feel the crunch at linebacker. Because Oklahoma, man, they are casting a wide net right now in linebacker.
Hmm.
So I wonder if somebody feels pressured to jump on board and just pulls the trigger. Somebody that is very familiar with campus, familiar with the staff, high priority. How about a little 2-for-1? What about the Jandro brothers?
I hate you. That's what I was gonna say. I hate you. I thought I was gonna get away with it and that you weren't gonna go there. But yeah, I think the Jandro brothers in a really good spot for Oklahoma. And look, I reported that the other day on OU Insider.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Oklahoma feels really, really, really good about the Jandro brothers. They also feel very strong about Donovan Webb out of Frisco, Texas.
See that one I struggle a little bit more to get on board with because
Really,
he's got the who's who coming after him. Now, the Jandro brothers, their offer sheets have expanded significantly in the last few weeks.
they have.
But
They want to play together,
then they do want to play together.
and that list is limited.
It is limited, but it's like it's USC, it's Washington, it's
Mhm.
Missouri. You contrast that with Donovan Webb, who's got
Oh, I get
Ohio
it.
State and LSU and Texas and Texas A&M, like those types of schools, right?
But how hard are they pushing for him?
I know Ohio State and LSU are pushing pretty hard.
Ohio State and LSU are pushing hard, but Ohio State is pushing and LSU are pushing for a few more safeties as well. And from my understanding, Donovan Webb is way up there on Oklahoma's, board.
As he
Uh,
dang well should be. That's a
yeah,
good football player.
yeah. I think. What about Davion Gross? I think we always forget about him, and
I
he's like
know
top
he's
50
an easy
player
guy to
too.
forget about. He's an easy guy to forget about, not because he's not really
No,
good,
he's
because he is.
freaking
I think he's
amazing.
just, yeah, he's quiet, man.
Yep.
Doesn't betray a whole lot with regard to his process. And so I look, we've talked about that battle being primarily a Texas A&M and Oklahoma battle, and I
Yep.
think that's what it is. I think that's what it will be going down to whenever decision time rolls around for him. But that's a very likely candidate to wind up in OU's class. Always has been. I
Jacob
remember
Eberhardt.
I don't usually do this for obvious reasons, but the day Oklahoma offered Davian Gross, I posted about it on our board and said, keep an eye on this one. This guy could very realistically wind up in OU's class. That was darn near a year ago, and here we
It
are.
was.
Devil Doc 97 threw us a $5 contribution via the super chat function and said, fellas, what is the situation with Keon Brown? Did Nagy choose not to pursue him now? No, I think it boils down to the fact that Oklahoma got Jer'Michael Carter, right?
Hmm.
And look, I just I wouldn't get your hopes up. I wouldn't let that Keon Brown situation hang over your head as something that occupies your mind because I think for many reasons it's become unlikely. And it always was unlikely, but I think it's become more unlikely with the addition of Jer'Michael Carter. There are academic hurdles there, right? We've talked about that. There
Yeah.
are academic hurdles that would have to get cleared. Could Oklahoma do it? And could Keon Brown do it? Yeah, sure, probably, I'd think. But is the juice worth the squeeze when you have 14 other receivers on the roster? That's kind of where I stand.
But yeah, there was the reason why is because it wasn't a guarantee he was even going to be able to make it. And I think
Yes.
you don't want to throw away a guaranteed guy that could potentially be a game changer for you. Potentially, I'm saying potentially be a game changer for you, or particularly be a big time contributor potentially for you, for somebody that maybe has a bigger upside, but also may not be able to make it to Norman. And when those type of things are at play, particularly at the cause of it, you take those risks in the NFL all day. You're not taking those risks in college because you're limited. You can't just reach down over there to the practice squad or the free agency in the middle of the season and go grab somebody to fill that spot.
Yeah.
That's not happening. You got what
Um,
you got.
Another super chat from Daryl Revels. He threw us $5 and said, with all the moves made this offseason, is it safe to say OU is giving BV a minimum 2 more years no matter the outcome of this season? Look, Daryl, yeah, I think I think you're probably like if we're talking about likely outcomes, I think you're right in concluding not much of a path for things to get so bad in 2025 that Oklahoma would part ways with Brent Venables. But I college football is a year-to-year business these days. That's become something of which we're all increasingly aware of late. And so I don't think there's any guarantee that Brent Venables is around post 2025, but it would have to get really, really bad. We're talking, I don't know, 3-9, 4-8, which possible? Sure. It's college football. Who the heck knows? But with all of the reinforcements that Oklahoma has added via the transfer portal, most specifically John Mateer and Jaden Ott, you don't necessarily have to talk yourself into 9 or 10 wins for this program to make yourself believe that at the very least, it's not going to be bad enough that Joe Castiglione and Jim Nagy decide to make a change at the head football coach position.
No, I agree. I think that you've got to be realistic about where the program is. Are you willing to want to lose with as well as he's recruited and what you have invested into the portal at this point, the roster that you have, young as it may be? Are you willing to lose 25, 30% of those guys if you were to let BV go at the end of the year, knowing that the schedule is also about to turn and you're not going to have to play this gauntlet? It's going to be a gauntlet because you're in the SEC, but you're not going to play every big name outside of Georgia and Florida in the SEC. Like, you have every one of those big names on your schedule, sans those two, and now you get Texas's schedule essentially coming up in 2026. So I think you're probably going to be willing to give BV a chance to write that. But I guess we'll see. Um, I guess before we go, are there any random? Was there another? Oh, there's one more. Rye Dog, thank you for the super chat. How are the Gibson wide receivers injuries coming along? Slowly. That's the best answer I can give you.
Gradually, yes.
Gradually.
I mean, which is fine, right? Because they don't need to be ready to play a football game next week.
Yep.
But as long as they're ready for the start of the season, which Jaden Gibson should be, we'll see about Giovanni Gibson. Um, as long as they're close to ready at the beginning of the season, which that's a more than fair expectation for both of them, then I think you're cool because you shouldn't need both of those guys for non-con play. It'd be nice to have them against
Yeah.
Michigan, certainly. But I think especially given that you're going up against a true freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood, if you win that game, it's probably going to be more on the shoulders of your defense. And so you're not going to need them throughout non-con play, but if you can have them both ready for SEC football, then
Yeah.
that is to be desired.
I do want to touch on this. We're closing this, version of the YouTube live out, but the recruiting, it says, but recruiting doesn't matter when this is from Joey Eisman, but recruiting doesn't matter when development isn't there. Look at the draft. It was embarrassing how little representation OU had. Fair. That's fair. But, I want your thoughts on this, Parker. Oklahoma also didn't have the numbers for eligible guys that they normally would have either. Like, there wasn't a ton of guys that were eligible for the draft. There were numbers and players available. However, the big name players that you're thinking of, that they just weren't draft eligible and or didn't throw their name in the draft because they knew if they came back another year, they could potentially move up. Because Oklahoma, like, if R. Mason Thomas would have thrown his name in the draft, he gets drafted. If Robert Spears Jennings would have thrown his name in the draft, he would have gotten drafted, right? Trying to think. And I know people are going to say no to this. Jacob Sexton probably would have got drafted. Maybe it probably went late, but he's always been talked about as an NFL guy, and you still talk to scouts now. They expect him to be even better this year and potentially move up. And I don't know if he's a fourth, fifth, sixth round guy. but he may have went in the seventh round. So like you look at all that, and who else am I missing here that could have entered the draft and didn't? Parker, Dominique Williams could have went and probably would have went later in the draft. Like those types of names could have went and could Kip Lewis was he? He's a redshirt guy. He
Well,
could.
I think there are a lot of guys like a lot of guys very
They would have been
wisely made
late.
decisions to
Yes, they
stick
made
around.
smart
Yeah.
decisions to move up early in the draft. I think if you look over the next few years, you will see a lot more guys get drafted from Oklahoma just
Well,
because,
and the NFL is more than ever a traits league,
yes,
right?
it
A
is.
traits league. And when you look at some of the guys on Oklahoma's roster that are traitsy, that maybe don't spring to mind as some of the very first candidates to hear their name called on draft day, a great example as you look ahead to next year is Robert Spears Jennings. Robert
Mhm.
Spears Jennings is a good football player.
Very
I
good.
don't think he's one of the first three or four names that you rattle off when you're going down the list of the alphas on Oklahoma's roster, but he's a good football player. What Robert
Correct.
Spears Jennings is, though, in addition to being a good football player, is he is incredibly traitsy.
Yes.
He is big, he is athletic, and he is really fast.
Yep.
That gets overlooked with Robert Spears Jennings. I remember when he lasered a 4.42 at the Under Armour All American festivities a couple years
Hmm.
back. I mean, won the fastest man competition. That kid can run. And
He,
so when you get somebody like that that's showing up to the NFL combine at 6'2", 215, right? Um, they're probably going to make a few scouts fall in love with him. So I think when you look ahead to the 2026 draft, it's a long way off and a lot can change between now and then. No
mhm.
doubt a lot will change, but dude, it could be the type of draft where Oklahoma approaches 10 draft picks,
Yeah.
double digit draft picks. I don't know how many first rounders, if any, there are amongst that group, but with as many talented football players as Oklahoma has that are getting ready to age out of the system and take their shot at the NFL, as well as some of those guys that maybe are juniors, redshirt juniors right now, like a Kip Lewis, that are very realistically going to have some solid draft stock at year's end. There's potential that Oklahoma could approach double digit draft picks next year.
It, one name that you think could surprise everybody, let's say they stay healthy or something and they skyrocket up the boards for NFL. I think it's probably the most easy name if you think about it.
You know what my answer is?
Who?
I don't know if this is along the lines of what you're thinking. Jaron Kanik at wide receiver.
You mean tight end?
No, Jaron Kanik at wide receiver.
I was going to say Gentry Williams because if he stayed healthy, the 2023 version of Gentry Williams when he led the nation 7 weeks into the season in interceptions, that guy is a game changer. And if his shoulder, which totally expected, if everybody kind of knows the story now, it's fixed. It wasn't fixed, and he was playing with a bum shoulder with the issue still wrong after surgery. Um, so we'll leave that alone. But now it's fixed, and I expect him to. I don't know if he'll get. It may be to the point with his career that he would have to have 2 seasons in a row healthy before an NFL team threw him, day two maybe type of draft. But he has that type of potential being 6'1". He's almost 200 pounds now, Parker. Like it's crazy how slender he used to be, and that dude looks like an NFL corner
Mm-hmm.
now. He's so big. And another guy that you got to think about that could come up, and if they do you think Jacoby Johnson finishes his career at OU at wide receiver or corner?
Corner at this point.
Do you think he gets drafted? He's tradesy.
He's traitsy, which gives him a
He's
chance.
tradesy. Yes, he's
That
tradesy.
that really, yes, definitely gives him a chance, man.
Yeah.
And I bring up Jaron Kanik at wide receiver, and that's going to sound weird to a lot of people.
It
I
sounded
really
really
don't think
weird
it
to
is
me. I'm
because,
not gonna
like,
lie.
well, I think about a guy that just went in the second round of last week's draft that very much followed a path that you can envision Jaron Kanik following. Now, he didn't play linebacker, but Jack Besh kind of made the reverse conversion from
Yeah.
tight end to wide receiver. He's
Yeah.
6'1", 214. Jaron Canick's a little bigger, 6'2", 225, 230. But with as fast as he can run, man, what if he's another Jack Besh, a
How much weight are they
jumbo
going to put
slot
on him
guy?
though? How much weight are they going to put on Jaron this summer though?
Yeah, well, a good question. But
That's kind of where my head's at there.
yeah,
But yeah, anyways,
if you want to cut him back down to 220 and he wants to play
yeah,
a slot in the NFL at 6'2", 220, you got something you can work with, I think.
yeah, particularly straight ahead
I don't know if
speed.
he's a second round pick, but he's somebody that, again, because of the traits and because of the sheer athleticism and the way that, like, if he gets a combine invite, Brandon, you and I both know he's going to light up the combine. He'll certainly light up pro day, and so
Yeah,
he'll have eyes on him. There will be NFL scouts that decide, okay, maybe we don't know exactly what he is, but he's going to do something, and we need to get our hands on him.
and Peyton Bowen would be the other one I would think of that everybody kind of forgets because he's been injured. But and I'll just say this: I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, was watching him cover during 1-on-ones and a little bit of 7-on-7, and they said out in space it was absurd, utterly absurd. And they said people are going to remember how good he was before he got hurt because that guy is back. And they weren't talking about last year before he got hurt. They were talking about that 2023 freshman All American Peyton Bowen, is what they're talking about. So, I mean, I think if you watch the OU's, uh, the OU DNA thing they had on for the spring, and Dominic Williams gets up there, and like you can tell they really believe how good they're going to be. Like they believe it. You didn't hear that talk last year. There wasn't that confidence, and I think you can probably thank Mateer for that. But there's a lot of confidence in that team. But we're going to talk about a lot of that stuff over the next few months. All that. If you aren't on OU Insider right now, is a great time to do. I understand the merger, all that type of stuff, but the good news is that during the merger, you'll get to keep your, regardless of you sign up with us or whatever, you'll get to keep your subscription no matter what. And all it costs is $9.95 right now, and you get OU Insider for 4 months for $9.95. 4 months, $9.95. One payment, 4 months. You pay for 1 month, you get 3 months free. You'll get it almost all the way through the month of August. Actually, you'll get it right up to the start of the season at this point. So if you sign up right now, you'll get OU Insider all the way up to the first week of football season for $9.95, or you can go the whole year route, $99.95. Or if you're a college student, have a .edu, right? .edu or active duty military. Email us ouinsider@rivals.com, and we will email you a promo code to get OU Insider for $11.95 for a whole year. That's less than $1 a month. You have to email us from your .edu. You have to email us from your military, active military email, and we will send you a promo code, $11.95 for a whole year. And you got to sign up with that email. You can't use somebody else's name and all that. And we've had that done before, but it's all good. But yeah, just we love to have you guys on there. We love talking to OU fans. We're growing really fast still. OU Insider has always been one of the top rival sites. So we want to thank you, OU fans, for everything you all have done, because we don't do this job without you all. You all make this job happen for us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. That's going to do it for this version of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. For Parker Thune, for Spencer Forsythe, my name is Brandon Drumm. You guys have a blessed night.